The transfer shuttle descended through the gray clouds of Station Meridian 7, its engines whining with the strain of atmospheric entry. Inside the cramped passenger hold, pressed between supply crates and indifferent travelers, sat a small figure that no one wanted to look at. Her name was Lyra, though no one on the shuttle knew that. No one had asked. She was Catharan, a species humanity had encountered only 3 years prior during the chaotic expansion into the outer reaches. Her skin held the faint luminescence of deep-sea creatures, pale blue-gray that shifted slightly in different light. Her eyes were large and dark, almost entirely pupil, adapted for the dim world she came from. But most notably, most damningly, she had no mouth as humans understood it. The lower half of her face was smooth, unbroken save for delicate breathing slits along her jaw that fluttered with each breath. Therans communicated through something else entirely: bioluminescent patterns that danced across specialized organs on their throats and forearms, a language of light and color and subtle movement that could convey more nuance than human words ever could. But to the humans on Station Meridian 7, a remote mining outpost clinging to the edge of habitable space, she was just the mute alien girl. The broken one. The one they had to take because their refugee placement program demanded it. The shuttle touched down with a metallic groan. Passengers filed out quickly, eager to escape the recycled air and cramped quarters. Lyra moved last, clutching the single, worn bag that contained everything she owned. The station's docking bay was massive and industrial, all steel and harsh lighting, filled with the constant drone of machinery and the sharp smell of ozone and metal dust. A bored-looking administrator met her at the gate, a woman with tired eyes and a datapad that she consulted without really seeing. "Lyra," she said, pronouncing it wrong, making it sound harsh and clipped. "You're assigned to Dormitory Wing C Sector 12. Meal vouchers are loaded on your ID chip. You're expected to work maintenance detail, probably. Someone will come find you." She didn't wait for a response. She couldn't have understood one anyway. Lyra watched her walk away, then looked around the vast bay. People moved in purposeful streams, everyone knowing where they belonged, what they were supposed to do. She stood still in the current, an obstacle they flowed around without acknowledgement. The first week was brutal. The dormitory was crowded, filled with workers and their families, a cramped warren of converted cargo containers stacked and welded together. The other residents took one look at her smooth, mouthless face and made their decisions. Some stared, some whispered. Most simply pretended she didn't exist. She tried to communicate the way her people did, letting soft patterns of blue and violet light ripple across her throat when someone approached, trying to convey greeting, gratitude, basic questions about where things were. But humans didn't see language and light. They saw a freak show. They saw something unsettling. A group of teenage boys started calling her Lampface whenever she passed in the corridors. Workers in the communal dining area would move seats when she sat down, as if her silence were contagious, as if not having a mouth meant she might somehow take theirs. She was assigned to waste management, the bottom rung of station work. Every morning at 0600 hours she reported to the sanitation depot, a grimy facility tucked into the station's lowest levels where the air was thick and the lighting flickered. Her job was simple: sort recyclables, clear debris from ventilation ducts, mop floors that never seemed to get clean. Her supervisor, a hard-faced man named Kowalski, made his opinion clear on her first day. "I don't care what you are or where you're from," he said, not looking at her. "You do the work, you stay out of the way, you don't cause problems. Clear?" She had made her throat glow with patterns of acknowledgement, gentle pulses of understanding. He had just frowned and walked away, muttering something about freaks and charity cases. The other sanitation workers ignored her. During breaks they clustered together, sharing jokes and complaints, while she sat alone in the corner, her lunch growing cold, her light language going unspoken, because there was no one to speak it. To Dot at night, in her narrow bunk in the dormitory, she would stare at the metal ceiling and let patterns of color drift across her skin in the darkness, silent poems of loneliness, of longing for the water worlds of home where light speech filled. The depths like stars filled the sky. But here, her words were invisible. Here, she was invisible. 3 weeks into her assignment, everything changed because of a man with kind eyes and a mop. His name was Samuel Chun. Though everyone called him Sam, he was the night janitor for the administrative wing, an older human with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a ponytail, laugh lines around his eyes, and the slightly stooped posture of someone who'd spent decades bending to clean up other people's messes. Sam was the kind of person who noticed things, the kind who saw people, not just obstacles or tasks. And one night, during the overlap between shifts when Lyra was finishing her rounds and Sam was beginning his, he saw her. She was in one of the ventilation access corridors, struggling with a stuck grate, her small frame braced against the corroded metal. She'd been working at it for 20 minutes, and her shift had already run over. If she didn't clock out soon, Kowalski would have another excuse to report her. "Hey," Sam said gently, approaching from down the corridor. "That one's been stuck for months. Maintenance keeps saying they'll fix it." Lyra startled, nearly dropping her tools. She turned, and the automatic defensive gesture came her throat, and forearms erupted in rapid patterns of apology, explanation, nervousness. Flashes of deep blue, quick pulses of white, the rippling motion that meant "I'm trying. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Please don't be angry." Sam stopped, his eyes widening. But unlike everyone else, he didn't look disgusted or afraid. He looked fascinated. "Wait," he said slowly. "Is that, are you talking? With the lights?" Lyra froze. Someone was asking. Someone was actually asking, carefully, hesitantly. She let a gentle wave of soft green move across her throat, the Kithaeron equivalent of a cautious yes. Sam's face broke into a smile. "I'll be damned. That's beautiful." He sat down, his cleaning cart, and came closer, moving slowly, respectfully. "I'm Sam, Samuel Chun. I'm guessing most people around here have been treating you like you can't communicate, huh?" Another pulse of green, affirmation. And then, before she could stop herself, a cascade of other colors, blues and grays and deep purples that meant lonely, invisible. "Thank you for asking. Thank you for seeing me." Sam didn't understand the specifics, but he understood enough. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, I bet they have. This station's not great. Hell, half the folks here still give me looks, and I've been here 15 years. He studied the patterns on her skin with genuine interest. "Think you could teach me your language? I mean, if you want to, I've got time. The night shift's pretty quiet." Lyra stared at him with her huge dark eyes, and for the first time since arriving at Station Meridian 7, she felt something other than despair. She let her whole body glow with warm gold, the color of gratitude so profound it bordered on reverence. So it began, every night, during the quiet hours when the station's corridors were nearly empty and the drone of machinery became almost meditative. Sam and Lyra met. Sometimes in the ventilation corridors, sometimes in empty storage rooms, sometimes in the tiny break room that Sam had claimed as his domain, decorated with faded pictures of Earth and a coffee maker that had to be older than Lyra herself. Sam approached learning Kithaeron light language with the same careful patience he brought to his work. He started with basics, yes and no, please and thank you, the fundamental building blocks. Lyra would demonstrate a pattern, and Sam would try to memorize the sequence, the colors, the rhythm. He kept a worn notebook where he sketched approximations, trying to capture the nuances. "Green pulse, steady, that's yes," he'd mutter, scribbling. "Green with blue undertones, that's agreement with reservation? Am I close?" Lyra would ripple with amusement, a sparkle of bright yellow-white that Sam had learned meant laughter or joy. "I'll take that as a yes," he'd say, grinning. It was slow. The language wasn't meant for beings without bioluminescent organs. And Sam couldn't respond in kind. But he learned to read it, to understand the emotional depth and complexity in every shimmer and pulse. And more importantly, he listened. Through light and gesture and Sam's patient questions, Lyra's story emerged. She had been born on Cathera Prime, a world of deep oceans and bioluminescent forests where her people had evolved to speak in. Light because sound carried poorly in water. Her community had been small, peaceful, focused on art and ecological harmony. But when the mineral surveys found valuable deposits beneath their settlements, everything changed. The mining corporations came first with offers, then with demands, then with barely concealed threats. When her people refused to relocate, citing the sacred nature of their ancestral reefs, the corporations pressured the interstellar authorities. Suddenly, Cathera Prime was declared underdeveloped and slated for resource optimization. Her family had been part of the resistance, peaceful cultural resistance. They had created art installations in light language, beautiful protests that lit up the ocean depths, telling stories of their home, their history, their right to exist. It had been magnificent. It had also been futile. The evacuation came suddenly. Her parents had been separated from her in the chaos, different refugee ships, different destinations. She'd been 13 years old, which was young even for Catherans. The refugee placement system had shuffled her through 4 different stations in 2 years, each one finding her harder to place, more difficult to accommodate. No one wants a kid who can't talk. She made her throat glow in somber blues and grays. Sam had learned to read the sorrow in those colors. "That's their loss," Sam said firmly. "And their ignorance. You can talk just fine. They just won't learn to listen." Lyra's throat shimmered with gratitude, but also with doubt. Deep violet, the color of despair. "What's the point? I'll never go home. My parents might be anywhere in the galaxy. And humans will always see me as broken." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he told her his own story. He'd grown up on Earth, in the remains of old Seattle, after the resource wars and climate collapse had reshaped the coasts. His family had been among the displaced, the forgotten climate refugees in their own land. He'd worked since he was young, taking whatever jobs no one else wanted, always on the edges of society. "I came to the stations because at least out here, everyone's displaced," he said. "Everyone's far from home." Thought it might make things more equal. He smiled sadly. "Turns out people carry their prejudices with them, even to the stars. But I also learned something. It only takes one person who sees you to make you feel human again. Or Catheran, in your case. Someone who treats you like you matter, that can save your life. You're that person for me," Lyra pulsed in warm amber. "And you're becoming that for me too, kid," Sam said. "You remind me why I still give a damn about people." Their friendship deepened. Sam started bringing her books reel. Paper books, salvaged and precious, and reading to her during their breaks. She'd never heard human stories before, not really. She discovered poetry, mythology, science fiction written by beings who dreamed of stars they'd never see, of aliens they'd never meet. She realized humans had their own light language. It was just trapped in words and pages instead of written on skin. She tried to share Catheran stories in return. And Sam would watch the elaborate patterns shift across her body, mesmerized even when he couldn't catch every nuance. "That one looked sad," he'd say. "Was it about the ocean?" "A pulse of green. Yes, thought so." "You get this specific shade of blue-gray when you're thinking about water. It's like watching someone remember home." Lyra began to feel less invisible. With Sam, she had a voice. With Sam, she was seen. The other sanitation workers started to notice their friendship. Most didn't care. Sam was weird anyway, with his books and his politeness and his refusal to join in the casual cruelty that made up so much of station life. But a few resented it. Kowalski especially seemed to take offense at the idea that Lyra might have an ally. You know, that thing can't understand you, he said to Sam one day, loud enough for others to hear. You're wasting your time playing make-believe with lights. She understands more than you do, Sam replied evenly. And she's got more to say than most people on this station. You'd know that if you bothered to learn. Kowalski sneered. You always were too soft, Jen. That's why you're still pushing a mop at your age. Sam just smiled. Maybe, but at least I can still sleep at night. Lyra watched this exchange, her skin flickering with concern, orange and red, the colors of danger and fear. She didn't want Sam to suffer because of her, but Sam just winked at her after Kowalski stormed off. Don't worry, kid. I've dealt with worse than him. You're worth a little trouble. 4 months after Lyra arrived on Station Meridian 7. Disaster struck. It started in the mining sector, deep in the station's industrial core. An equipment malfunction in one of the primary excavation units, a massive drill system that bored into the asteroid the station was built around. The malfunction caused a cascade failure in the cooling systems, which led to a pressure breach, which led to an explosion that rocked the entire station. Alarms shrieked through every corridor. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, automatically, sectioning the station to prevent atmosphere loss. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the hellish red glow of emergency lighting. Lyra was in the dormitory when it happened. The explosion threw her from her bunk, sent her sprawling across the floor as the whole structure groaned and shuddered. Around her, people screamed, panicked, grabbed their belongings and fled toward the evacuation points. She scrambled to her feet, disoriented, her skin flashing with instinctive distress signals, bright whites and yellows, the Terran equivalent of alarm calls. But in the chaos, no one noticed her signals. People shoved past her, trampled her, ignored her shouted light warnings because they couldn't understand, couldn't see. The dormitory corridor filled with smoke. Something was burning. The emergency ventilation wasn't working. People choked and coughed, stumbling blind, trying to find the exits. Lyra's mind raced. Her breathing slits could filter the smoke better than human lungs could. Terrans had evolved in volcanic vent ecosystems where the water was often filled with particulates. She could see better in the dim red light than humans could. And she knew these corridors intimately from months of sanitation work, but she couldn't shout directions, couldn't call out warnings. Her light language was invisible in the chaos. Unless she thought of Sam, of the hours they'd spent, him learning to see her language, of the patience and attention he'd shown. What if others could learn? What if they had to? Lyra ran to the main junction of the dormitory corridor, where 3 passages met and confusion was thickest. People milled around, arguing about which way led to safety, some heading toward collapsed passages, others about to run into the sections where smoke was heaviest. She climbed onto a service box, making herself tall as she could, and then she let her body blaze. Every bioluminescent organ she possessed flared to maximum intensity. Her throat, her forearms, even the subtle patterns along her ribs and back that rarely showed, all of it erupted in brilliant, impossible-to-ignore light. She lit up the corridor like a beacon, like a living star. People stopped, stared. Some shielded their eyes. For the first time since she'd arrived, every single person was looking at her. And then she began to signal. She didn't use complex Terran grammar. She used something more basic, more universal. Light and movement. She'd watched humans use hand signals in the station's simple gestures for direction, for danger, for safety. She adapted them, made them visible, made them impossible to misunderstand. She pointed with her whole arm toward the safe passage, the one she knew led to the functioning evacuation points, and her arm blazed with steady green, the universal color of safety, of go, of this way. She pointed toward the collapsed corridor, and her arm flashed red danger, stop death. Simple, binary, unmistakable. For a moment, no one moved. Then a woman holding a child made the decision. She ran toward the green light, toward the passage Lyra indicated. Others followed. And then more. Lyra kept signaling, her body a living emergency system, guiding people through the smoke and darkness. When someone started to panic, to freeze, she'd pulse with calm blue. When they needed to hurry, urgent yellow. When they reached safety, warm gold of encouragement, she worked until her muscles ached from maintaining the light output, until her breathing slits burned from the smoke, until the last straggler had made it through dot, and then she collapsed. She woke up in the medical bay, 18 hours later. The ceiling was white and clean, and the air smelled of antiseptic. Her body felt drained, like she'd swum across an ocean. Bioluminescence required enormous energy, and she'd maintained maximum output for nearly 40 minutes straight. Sam was sitting beside her bed, his eyes red-rimmed with worry and exhaustion. When he saw her eyes open, his whole face crumpled with relief. "Lyra, thank God, or thank whatever Catharans think. I thought when they brought you in, you weren't glowing at all. I thought," she managed a weak pulse of reassuring green on her throat. "I'm okay. You saved 73 people," Sam said, his voice thick. 73 people from dormitory wing C alone. The smoke would have gotten them, or they'd have run into the collapsed sections. You guided them all out. He gripped her hand. "You incredible, amazing kid. You saved them." Over the next few days, as the station worked to repair the damage and account for casualties, Lyra's actions became known. The rescued families talked. The station administrators reviewed security footage and saw the blazing figure in the smoke, the living beacon that had emerged exactly when it was needed. Opinions began to shift. A woman named Priya, who'd lived 3 doors down from Lyra in the dormitory and never once acknowledged her, came to the medical bay with her 2 children. "You saved my babies," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was running the wrong way. I couldn't see. And then your light, you showed us the way." She looked at Lyra with new eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I never tried to see you before." Lyra's throat glimmered with patterns of forgiveness, of understanding. More came. Workers she'd cleaned up after, teenagers who'd mocked her, people who'd treated her as invisible furniture now saw her as a person, a hero. The station administrator, the same tired woman who'd processed Lyra's arrival, came with a formal commendation and an apology. "We failed you," she said. "The refugee placement program, the station integration services, all of us. We should have provided translation services, cultural orientation, and proper support. Instead, we dumped you in the worst housing and the worst jobs and expected you to disappear." She met Lyra's dark eyes. "You deserved better. You deserve better." Lyra created a complex pattern of acknowledgement, but also of question. "What now?" The administrator understood the intent, if not the specifics. "That's up to you. Your refugee status gives you the right to request reassignment, to apply for different work, different stations. After what you did, I'll personally ensure any request is approved." "We've also located her parents," Sam interjected quietly. He'd been working on it for weeks, calling in favors, searching databases. "They're on Gateway Station 14, in the inner colonies. They've been looking for her too. If she wants, we can arrange transport." Lyra's whole body rippled with emotion. Her parents. After 2 years, her parents. But she looked at Sam, at this human who had learned to see her, and she felt the pull of impossible choice. She could go home. Not to Cathera, that world was gone, strip-mined and abandoned, but to her parents, to her people, to the scattered Catheran communities trying to rebuild their culture in exile. Or she could stay. Here, on this rough station on the edge of nowhere, where people had finally learned to see her light. "You don't have to decide now," Sam said gently. "But Lyra, wherever you go, you've proved something. You've proved that being different doesn't mean being broken. You've proved that sometimes the languages others don't bother to learn are the ones that save lives. That night, after the visitors left, Lyra stood at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, her parents waited. Somewhere out there, other K-Therans were learning to survive in a galaxy that didn't speak their language. But here, right here, she'd found something precious. Not a replacement for home, but something new. She'd found someone who valued her voice enough to learn to hear it. She'd found proof that change was possible, that bridges could be built between even the most different beings. Sam found her there, brought her a cup of the awful station coffee that she'd learned to tolerate. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. "I've been thinking," Sam said eventually, "about what you did during the crisis. About how you adapted your language, made it universal." He looked at her thoughtfully. "The station needs a new emergency communication system. All our tech failed. But what if we had something else? What if we trained people in basic light signal communication? What if your language became part of our safety protocol?" Lyra's eyes widened. "You could teach it," Sam continued. "Not the complex stuff, the basics. Universal signals for danger, safety, direction. It could work with K-Therans, with humans, with any of the dozen species passing through this station. And you'd be perfect to develop the program," he smiled. "It would mean staying for a while. But it would also mean your language would become something this station depends on, something they value." Lyra let colors cascade across her skin: excitement, hope, nervousness, possibility. All the emotions she couldn't speak swirling together in a chromatic symphony. She thought of her parents waiting in the inner colonies. She'd go to them, she had to. But maybe not forever. Maybe she could build bridges in both directions. She created a pattern on her throat. A new pattern she and Sam had developed together, a hybrid of K-Theran, light grammar and human gesture. "Yes, I'll stay. I'll teach, and then I'll go to my parents. But I'll come back." Sam's eyes misted. "Yeah, this is home too now." "You made it home." 3 months later, Station Meridian 7 had something unique in the outer colonies. A fully implemented light-based emergency communication system, developed by a 17-year-old K-Theran refugee and taught to every resident. As part of mandatory safety training, Lyra stood in front of her first class of 20 humans. Various ages, all of them looking at her with respect and curiosity instead of disgust or dismissal. She let her throat glow with warm greeting colors, a pattern that they'd all learned meant hello. "Welcome, let's begin." And 20 humans responded with handheld light wands, mimicking her pattern back to her in clumsy but earnest approximation. Sam watched from the back of the classroom, his eyes crinkling with pride. In the front row, Priya's daughter raised her hand. "Teacher Lyra, can you show us the pattern for friendship again? I want to make sure I get it right." Lyra's whole body shimmered with joy, brilliant gold and pink, the colors of happiness so profound it lit up the entire room. She'd come to this station as the alien girl nobody wanted, the one who couldn't speak. She'd been invisible, discarded, treated as broken. But she'd found one person who bothered to listen. One person who taught her that communication isn't about the mouth you're born with, it's about the heart willing to understand. And that single act of kindness, that willingness to see her, had changed everything. It had changed the station. It had changed the people. It had changed the very definition of what language could be. 6 months after that, Lyra stood in the docking bay of Gateway Station 14, her small bag clutched in trembling hands, as 2 K-Theran adults pushed through the crowd. Her parents, they saw her and stopped, their bodies erupting in patterns of disbelief, of grief and joy and desperate love. And Lyra ran to them, her own skin blazing with every color of homecoming, of reunion, of the words "I missed you, I love you, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here." They held each other in the middle of the busy docking bay, while humans and aliens streamed around them. And they spoke in the language of light, telling 2 years of stories in cascading patterns that no human present could fully understand. But one thing was universally clear. This was love. This was family. This was a voice finally heard. Lyra stayed with her parents for 3 months. She learned about the Terran diaspora, about the communities struggling to preserve their culture across a dozen worlds. She met other young Terrans who'd been displaced, who'd learned to hide their light rather than shine it, who'd been taught that their language was a disability in a human-dominated galaxy, and she told them about Sam, about Station Meridian 7, about a place where she'd been heard. It's possible. She signaled to a gathering of young Terrans, her patterns eager and bright. Change is possible. We can teach them. We can build bridges. We don't have to hide. Her parents watched her with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Their daughter had grown up in exile, had become someone new, not just Terran, but something more, someone who moved between worlds. You're going back, her mother signaled gently. It wasn't a question. Lyra's colors shifted to complex patterns, love for her parents, love for what she'd found, the bittersweet pull of 2 homes. I want to build more programs, she pulsed. More stations, teach more people. Make sure other Terrans don't have to be invisible. She looked at her parents with huge, earnest eyes. But I'll come back, often. This is home. But that place Station Meridian 7, that's home too now. Her father's skin shimmered with understanding. You are the bridge, little light. You are what we all must become, beings who can speak in many languages, who can shine in many worlds. When Lyra returned to Station Meridian 7, Sam was waiting at the docking bay. He'd clearly tried to clean up. His jumpsuit was freshly washed, his hair neatly tied back. But the effect was ruined by the huge, ridiculous smile splitting his face. "Welcome home, kid," he said. Lyra's whole body blazed with joy, and she threw herself at him in a hug that would have been scandalous 4 months ago. The mute alien girl and the old janitor. But now people smiled as they passed, and some even waved, using the light wands they carried for emergencies to flash greeting patterns in clumsy but genuine Terran. "You've been busy," Sam said, laughing, as he returned the hug. "Got messages from 3 other stations asking about the light communication program." Word spreading. Lyra pulled back and created patterns of excitement, of plans and possibilities. She developed new ideas while with her parents. Ways to expand the program, to make it more sophisticated while keeping it accessible. "I also got approval for something else," Sam said, suddenly shy. "If you're interested, there's a position opening up, refugee integration specialist, helping new arrivals adjust, teaching humans about different species, developing communication protocols. It's not much pay, but it's official. It's respected. And I may have told them that the position was only worth creating if you filled it." Lyra stared at him, colors swirling too fast to parse. Shock, gratitude, disbelief, hope. "You saved lives here," Sam continued. "You changed your mind. That deserves more than cleaning toilets, so what do you say? Want to help make sure the next kid who arrives here, whoever they are, doesn't have to feel invisible?" Lyra's answer was a supernova of light, every color in the Terran spectrum, all at once. A pattern so bright and complex, it was almost painful to look at directly. Sam laughed, shielding his eyes. "I'm going to take that as a yes." 2 years later, Station Meridian 7 had become something of a model for refugee integration in the outer colonies. It wasn't perfect. Prejudice doesn't disappear overnight, and there were still those who resented change. But it was better. Measurably, visibly better. Lyra, now 19 years old and official integration specialist, stood in the docking bay with Sam beside her. A transport was arriving, carrying a family of Corixa species with crystalline exoskeletons that communicated through resonant frequencies inaudible to most organic ears. "Tough case," the administrator said, reviewing the file. No one's figured out how to bridge the communication gap. They'll probably just get warehoused somewhere quiet. Lyra's throat flashed with determined orange, the color of challenge accepted. She exchanged a look with Sam and he grinned. "Yeah," Sam said. "We've heard that before." As the Kurix family descended the ramp, clearly frightened and disoriented, Lyra approached them slowly. She let her skin glow with soft, welcoming colors. And then she did something new. She pulled out a small device she'd been developing. With the station's engineers, it detected the Kurix resonance frequencies and translated them into visible light patterns. The lead Kurix stopped, its crystalline body chiming with surprise. The device glowed in response to its sounds. Lyra's throat pulsed with greeting colors, and the device translated those into frequencies. For the first time, humans and Kurix communicated directly. The Kurix S-body chimed with what the device indicated was gratitude, wonder, relief. Sam watched his friend work, watched her welcome the lost and frightened with the same patience he'd once shown her, and his heart swelled with pride. Later, in their usual spot in the break room, still decorated with Sam's faded Earth pictures and impossible coffee maker, they shared coffee and comfortable silence. "You know what I think?" Sam said eventually. "I think you're going to change the galaxy, kid. One station at a time." Lyra's colors shifted to modest blues, but he could see the pink tones of pleasure underneath. "I had a good teacher," she pulsed. "Yeah, well, I had a good student." Sam raised his coffee cup in a toast. To listen, to learn. To voices that don't need mouths to be heard. Lyra touched her cup to his, and her whole body glowed with the deep gold of gratitude, the soft blue of belonging, the warm amber of love, all the things she'd never expected to find on a gray mining station at the edge of nowhere. She'd come here as the one nobody wanted. The broken one. The one who couldn't speak, but she'd found someone who listened. And in listening, he'd taught her something profound, that every being has a voice, no matter how different, no matter how strange. And that the greatest gift anyone can give is the willingness to learn to hear it. Some voices are spoken in words, others in light, others in frequencies or colors or gestures or touch, but all of them matter. All of them deserve to be heard. And sometimes, all it takes is one person, one tired janitor with kind eyes and too much patience to prove that truth. To change one life, and through that one life, to change everything else. Lyra looked around the break room, at the cramped space that had become her sanctuary, at the man who'd become her family, at the station that had become her home. She was no longer invisible. She was seen, heard, valued. And every day, she worked to make sure that every lost soul who arrived at Station Meridian 7 would be seen too, because that's what kindness does. It spreads, it transforms, it saves, one light at a time. It illuminates the darkness. One person at a time, it changes the stars.